Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Bryan+Post. And tonight we have in-studio guest. Everyone say hello to Santa Claus. Santa's joining us this evening on the Daily Dose. But that's not all. There's also Mrs. Claus. What an amazing guest that we have on the Daily Dose this evening. So everyone give Mr. and Mrs. Claus a round of applause. We're so happy to have them here and so excited for them to be joining us in studio. And they may actually give a couple of messages during the talk. Who knows? Probably not. They said they're feeling kind of tired from their journey here, so we'll go ahead and zoom in on Big Papa. And okay, actually they say they're probably going to be taking off because they've got little kids to go see, little kitties to see who's been naughty and who's been nice, and mommies and daddies too. So fantastic. Well, thank you guys for joining us. All right, so I thought this evening we would do something. Hey Jennifer, hey Amy. I thought we'd do something a little different. Actually, this fireplace was on right behind me, and I was sitting down here for a moment. I thought I'd create a nice ambiance for us this evening as we gather around and visit with one another. And then I thought, I think I better turn that off, or else I'm going to end up like Michael Jackson in the Pepsi commercial back in the day. And nobody wants to see that. Well, I think that would probably go viral, but I don't think Big Papa and the dreadlocks are down for all of that. So we turned it off. So actually last night I was, took you guys back to a little kindergarten experience, and I thought, let's talk a little bit about, stories from along the healing road. And I thought I'd share some stories with some kids I've worked with over the years to just kind of catch you up to date on what some of them doing, because you guys have heard my stories, or many of you, unless you're new to Planet Post, many of you have heard my stories for years and years and years. And some of you are new, so just to give you a little bit of perspective, some of the stories that I share with you all, they sound pretty recent, but they can be coming back from as far as 20 years ago. Just recently I did the talk on 10-20-10, and I think I shared a story about having the mom put her hand on her daughter for 3 minutes. Well, that first happened 19 years ago. That was 19 years ago in Ardmore, Oklahoma, with a little girl who was referred to me from social services. And that was the first time I came up with 10-20-10, started to develop that little tool. And so have used it for a long time ever since then. And then I also tell a little story, and I obviously lost contact with that family, so I'm not sure kind of what happened with that young lady. But another story that I tell a lot of is the one of the mom who's 67 years old and the adopted daughter who is 9. Well, we talked. The story was that mom, first of all, contacted me because she was having problems with her daughter's incessant chatter. So her daughter was chattering all the time, and just didn't have anything really to say, but just was, trying to get mom's attention. And mom was emailing me, and she's like, "Well, what can I do about this incessant chatter?" And so my first response was, "Do you ever listen to her?" And the mom emailed me back and she said no. And I said, okay, well, let's practice 20 minutes every day of undivided time and attention. Turn off the television, put down the magazines, and just pay attention to her. Because as I've talked about before, children who have mindless chatter are insecure children, and they're looking for ways to connect with their parents and get that security and get that regulation. Well, that same situation morphed into another situation. Hey, Bethany. Hey, Sylvia. Morphed into another situation where the mom said, well, what about bad time? Every single night I go in my daughter's bedroom and I tell her it's time to take a bath, and she starts flipping out on the ground. And usually I just jump on her. Mom had had some attachment disorder training. It was a kind of a weird little thing that attachment therapists during that time were recommending to parents, that they just restrain their kids until the kids, give in or submit or something strange. Mom says I just jump on her and I just hold her down, and she just flails, and basically then she's exhausted. And then we go and we go into the bathroom, and then she starts flipping out again, but this time she's getting in the tub whether she likes it or not. Even if I got my clothes on, I'm putting her in that tub, water splishing and splashing everywhere, and she's going to take that bath, and I'm going to give it to her. And then she said, I don't even bother trying to wash her hair, and finally we both fall out of the tub exhausted. And then you realize she won't even fall asleep. Now this was all in an email exchange. Mom was asking me this question. And she said, so wise one, what do I do about that? And I said, well, the next time you go in to tell her it's time to take a bath and she starts flipping out on the ground, kicking and screaming, I said, I want you to sit on the bed. And I want you to take 10 deep breaths, and I don't want you to do anything else. I just want you to ask yourself how you're feeling. I want you to get in touch with your feelings. See, at this time, this is when I was first coming up with the 3 R's: reflect, relate, and regulate. So I was having the mom reflect. A lot of times we want to jump right into a situation. We want to jump right into behavior problems with our children, trying to fix them, but we don't spend enough time investigating. We don't spend enough time trying to understand what could some of the dynamics be that are, at the underlying cause of these behaviors. And so I just asked the mom to sit on the bed. I don't want you to do anything else. I just want you to sit on the bed. Now, that was a big ask from a mom who's, number one, 67 years old at the time, and who has raised this 9-year-old child who's gotten this pattern of every night there being this big issue around bath time. So she emailed me back and she said, that doesn't seem like very sound therapeutic advice. And I just emailed her back and I said, well, you asked me for the advice. I didn't ask you. So give it a shot and let's see what happens. And it was about 6 days later. I was in a parking lot in California. As a matter of fact, it's funny how certain things in your life happen, certain events, and you can remember the time, the place, and everything. And I had just pulled into a parking lot in California. I think I was there to give a lecture. I think I may have been in the San Jose area even. Strange that I even remember the city. And Mom said, you're never going to believe this. I went in the bath time, told her it was time to take a bath. She started flipping out, flailing on the ground like she always does. But this time, instead of jumping on her, I sat in the bed. She said, I felt like a fool sitting there on the bed while my 9-year-old's throwing this big old tantrum. She said, but do you realize in less than 10 seconds, these were exact words. I still remember. I've told this story 1,000 times at least. In less than 10 seconds, she completely stopped what she was doing, climbed up on my lap as if she needed a hug, realized that she didn't, and then she went and got in the bath. And Mom said, that was almost too much for my old heart. And that was the beginning of the end of their bath time battles. And that had been going on for 5 years, ever since the mom had started raising the little girl. And it was so bad with washing the hair that Mom was no longer washing her hair at home. She'd take her to the hairstylist to get her hair washed because she didn't want to go through the pain. Now, about 6 months later, I went out and worked with that family. And come to find out that the little girl, when she was picked up by social services at the age of 3, had lice so thick on her you could pick it off with your fingers. So she had severe post-traumatic stress disorder around baths and hair and all of that kind of stuff. And so Mom hadn't made that connection, but they were already making the shift by then. But then the other part is, when Mom was a little girl, her older sister used to scream in her face all the time. And it used to just send her into a state of shock. Well, her little girl screaming at her was triggering her shock trauma, causing her to, just go emotionally absent, but then she was jumping on the child, holding the child down, restraining her. So that's akin to, so when the parent emotionally abandons the child, that and then jumps on them or restrains them, that's akin to being attacked by a stranger. You do, the child can't trust that any more than the parent can trust that they're safe doing it. Well, that story, and that lady's name is Nancy Clark. And Nancy and I became fast friends. She was so feisty, so fiery. She was a retired marriage and family therapist for 30 years. And we went on to write a trilogy of fairy tales, therapeutic fairy tales for children. And I think we still have them available in the Post+Institute, called the Forever Child series. If I had some, I'd show them, because they were the coolest things. And I wrote the poems in the beginning, and I wrote the parent guide at the back of the fairy tale. So we wrote several of those, and I think there ended up being 4 altogether. And the young lady, Christina was her name. Last time I talked to Nancy, and so this was, all between 15 and 17 years ago now. She had grown into a young woman and was married to a guy who had children, and she was helping raise his children. And she was just surviving and doing the best she could and was doing well. And then there was another story I always tell about a mom who heard me tell that story at a lecture. And what's so strange about that is that her daughter's name was Christina too. Her name was Linelia. The mom's name was Linelia. And her daughter's name was Christina too. And you look on Post+Institute, Bethany. Bethany says, I need those books. They're fantastic. We did one on lies. We did one on aggression. And we did one on, I think, dissociation. And then I think Nancy wrote another one on sexual abuse. I can't remember that last one for some reason. I remember the color of it. I may not even seen it. But yeah, look on Post+Institute. And I know Christy's probably got access to those. And you can always send her a message, and she'll respond to you. So a mom heard me tell that story in a lecture in Dallas, Texas. Another one of those situations, where you remember the scenario. And her daughter's name was Christina, and she was 9 years old. And she emailed me a couple weeks after the lecture, and she said, I heard you tell the story at the lecture. And here's something that's really interesting. And I lectured for the better part of 15 years. And obviously I still travel around and do some lectures. Not as many as I used to. I retired really from the speaking circuit for the better part of the last, 8 years, and have only done a talk or two. But, so I was before that, for the better part of 10, almost 15 years, I was always lecturing pretty much nonstop. So I met a lot of people, and I always gave my people in my audience, I always get my email address, and I said, email me. And you know what? Very few people actually ever did, which is fine. But Linelia was one of those moms who did. And she said, after your talk, I went home. She said, we've had problems with the shower for the last 4 years. And her daughter, like I said, Christina's 9 years old, same as Nancy's. Christina's 9 years old. So it was just, the similarities were very interesting. And she said, and she was adopted as well. She said that we've had shower problems with my daughter taking a shower ever since she was 4 years old. So for the last 5 years. And she's like, I heard you tell the story, so I thought, I'm gonna be calm tonight. She said, because usually I tell my daughter it's time to take a shower, and she's rolling her eyes, she's talking back, and it's just not fun. And so she said I was going to be calm, and I took my deep breaths, and I went in. I said, honey, it's time to take a shower. And she said, sure enough, my daughter starts rolling her eyes and talking back like she always does. But this time I said, honey, if you need anything, I'll be right there. And so she said, my daughter went and got in the shower. She's like, I was amazed. But sure enough, she called me just like she always does. Mom, the water's too hot. It's too cold. I don't like this soap. I dropped my towel. I don't like this towel. She said, usually it just frustrates the heck out of me. But this time, I went in, I got everything that she needed. And see, this is the power of breathing. Remember when I tell you, in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted and our short-term memory suppressed. Well, when you're stressed, you're not thinking about solutions. You don't have access to solutions. So you have to calm that stress brain down. And when you calm that stress brain down and move out of fear into love, love has abundant solutions for you all. Abundant solutions. And I mean, I do this principle, this concept called the A to Z, what's called the A to Z principle, which means, any problem behavior is at Z and it always starts at A. So in between the A and the Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, are all these possibilities for interventions and solutions and things that we can do to impact the outcome. The problem is we're so focused on the outcome, we never look at the process. And I'll do another daily dose on that one of these days. But, so she said, I went in, I got what she needed, and I said, honey, you know what? If you need anything else, I'll be right here. She said, I just sat there in the bathroom. And she said, that was the best shower we have had in the last 4 years. So I thought I would go for a home run. And my 9-year-old got out of the shower, had a towel wrapped around her, went to her room. I sat down on her bed. I said, honey, sit beside mama. And she sat beside me. I put my arm around her. I said, honey, that's the best shower we've had in 4 years. Honey, what is it that scares you so much about taking a shower? She said, my 9-year-old daughter looked at me and said, well, Mom, the guy who sexually molested me made me take a shower with him. And she said, I looked at her and I said, well, honey, you don't have to take a shower anymore. You can take a bath. And she said, my daughter gets out of the bath now. Remember, this is 2 weeks after the lecture. My daughter gets out of the bath, in the bath, and out of the bath now faster. I never even know it's happened. Problem completely gone. 5 minutes to overcome 4 or 5 years of pain and turmoil over this shower. Mom knew her little girl had been sexually molested by this creeper, but she didn't understand the magnitude of the shower and the connection and the post-traumatic stress disorder. So 4 years, almost 5 years, overcome in 5 minutes. And people want to tell me this stuff is not magic. Love is magic. Love is the most powerful healing force in the universe. Guess what? That girl is now 20-something odd years old. I think last time I talked to that family, and I've become close to families. I love the families that I serve. They had a tough time with their son. They lost their son some years back, but their daughter who was in college and she was moving on. So it's just another one. The other night I told a story about a young man who put the knife, was working with his parents. He put the knife to his throat and threatened to kill himself. And then he threatened to kill, one of us in the therapy session. And, I just said, buddy, I'm sorry. No one's going to hurt you. And he went and put the knife away. Well, that young man, he stays in touch with Christy all the time. He's traveling all around the country. He pops through Claremore and sees Christy and Marley and spends the night with them from time to time on his way back to Virginia or up to New York and then back to California. And I got a picture of him the last time he popped through. So he's just, he's just surviving, moving on. And he's now, and he was 10 years old then. So he was 10 years old then, and he's like 25 now. So that was 15 years ago. That story. Oh, and then I got one of my most favorite little friends. I went to work with his family, and it was probably 13 years. Well, this is back when I was traveling like nonstop for probably the better part of 7 years. I just traveled around the world and stayed with families in their homes for several days at a time, and we just worked real hard to try to have these breakthroughs. And some of the families I just connected with and stayed in touch with and just fell in love with and have watched their kids grow up. Some of them I lost touch with, really enjoyed and lost touch with. Others, I didn't ever hear from them again after I left. And, those were some pretty hard sessions and they go on and do the things that they do. I don't always know, but some of them, the ones who have just remained in touch and contact, and this is 15 years, guys. 15 years. His name is DJ, and his parents contacted me, and his mom, Laura, one of my just sweetest dearest. I always call her my little friend because she's like 5 foot tall, and she's so feisty, and she went on to become a marriage and family therapist. So she's rocking it in Fresno as a licensed marriage and family therapist now. I'm so proud of her. Well, they called me because their son was being bullied at school, and he had these nosebleeds. He'd get these stress nosebleeds, and he'd get them every day. And it was just bad. It was just bad. And he was just the sweetest little guy. He was hyper and he was happy. He was a live wire. He was just fun. He's one of those little kids that's just fun. He just got a good heart. And you could just feel it. And it would just make me sad to think that he was getting picked on. And Mom said one day she went to pick him up at school, and a kid pushed him right in front of her, and he hit his head on the ground. And it was just, it's just unfortunate. Well, I went out and spent some time with them. And after our first weekend together, his nosebleeds went away. So there was something in the emotional work that we did that he had a release, and his nosebleeds went away. And we stayed in touch. And she actually edited my very first parenting book called For All Things a Season. Now, you can still get that on Amazon. It's For All Things a Season. And there's some used copies of it. It's not in print, and we've talked about bringing it back into print before, but we haven't. I need to rewrite it and expand it and revise it, all that stuff. It's got a really cool original art on the cover, and then it's based on the poem by Khalil Gibran when he talks about the prophet, one of my favorite poets. And books of poetry is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And he talks about on children, and he talks about sending children out as if they were arrows on bows. And so the artwork on the front of the cover is it's really God in a pasture of grain. And he's if you see the bow, it's got the two parents, and then the arrow is supposed to reference the child. And so yeah, you can get that on Amazon. Just type in For All Things a Season, and there are used copies out there. I actually ordered a used copy some years ago because I didn't have a copy anymore. And I think we sold like 30,000 copies of that book before it went out of print. And I think I picked up with some other books and some other things. But I stayed in touch with that family, and DJ is now, he actually came out when I was in Virginia Beach and stayed for a weekend. He's now the leader of a rock band in California, and he sent me a Facebook message the other day. They were playing, and he got a little video clip, and it's so cool. He's just rocking out, and he's just doing so well, and he's still so happy. He's so happy. He's just so full of love and joy, and he's bringing the world his music, and it's so awesome. I'm so proud of him. And then there are other kids. I told you the story of the kid who peed on the floor. If you've been in my lecture, you heard me tell the story of being at the group home and left, and one of the kids, he was 16, he peed in the middle of the floor, and my housekeeper quit, and my school teacher got overwhelmed because we were short staffed, so I had them with the kids. I don't know if I've talked about that that particular story on the Daily Dose. I'll save that story for another time. But he peed in the middle of the floor, and I handled it in a way that's different than how most people would handle it. And basically, apologized to him for putting him in a place to where he would feel so stressed that he would regress and pee like a 2-year-old would, because that's exactly what a 2-year-old would do. And I cleaned it up, and he didn't know what to say. And a few years back, he came to visit, and he's had some problems. He's had some problems. He's been in and out of jail, and he's still a good kid. But, and I still pray for him, and I hope he's going to do well. But he came out to stay, and he said that when I cleaned up that pee, when he was 16 and he's now 23 years old, 24, maybe 25, he said that was the first time he ever felt what love was. And just that one moment when I got down on my hands and knees and I cleaned up that pee, and I apologized to him for feeling so stressed that he would regress and like a 2-year-old pee in the middle of the floor. And he said, that was the first time I ever felt like anyone loved me. And that's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing what power love has. And, I remember all these stories. My life is built on these stories. This is the work I was just meant to do. everything I've gone through, I talked about my friend Clint Dotson last night, but everything I've gone through, the struggles that my sister had growing up, the struggles that my parents had, the struggles that I've had, it's all to have the experiences, to be able to share with you all, to be able to offer you some guidance, to be able to offer you some support when you feel like, there's no hope. Just to tell you that I've been there. I've been there in so many ways. I've been there with my own children. I've been there with other people's children. I'm still there with you and your children and with your families. And I can tell you, don't give up. Just don't give up. I know some days it's going to feel like it's just the worst. It's just the worst. But that's just making us stronger. It's just making us stronger. That's not the end. And parenting is a lifelong journey. It doesn't end at 18. I know that may sound a little depressing for some of you, but I have seen the worst kids make it to adulthood and heal and have families of their own and start carrying on with their lives. And now I've got some stories that, oh my gosh, I've got some stories of kids who just, they were in some really bad places and they've gone on to do some really good things. And so I've been doing it for a long time and I've seen what can happen, and I don't want you to quit. And that's why I show up here every day. I don't want you to quit. I want you to continue to have faith, because love is magical. It truly is magical. And it gives us all the grace to fail and to make mistakes. And children give us that grace too. They don't need us to be perfect. They just need us to be the best that we can be. So just know that there are others that have come before you, and you may be new to the journey. You may be old in the journey. And I know I've got parents who are glad their kids are adults now. And one day you'll be glad your kids are adults now. And what I want for you all is I want you to have the most loving, closest relationship ever. And it may not be there now, but if you just hang on, it's going to happen. There's so much change is going to happen in the brain. So much change is happening every single day that you can't see with your eyes. It's happening in the heart. It's happening in the brain. So just keep going. Remember, in any given situation, we always have two choices. We can continue to react from fear and stress and overwhelm. We can do the same thing and we can expect a different result. Or we can stop, we can take some deep breaths, we can really challenge ourselves. We can really challenge ourselves to do something different. We can challenge ourselves to create a new story. You don't have to live the same story that you grew up with. You don't have to live the same story that you've been living. You have the power to create a new story. You can create a new story. You can start tonight just by choosing love. So I hope you all will choose love. I just want to say God bless you. I hope you lay down tonight. I hope your bodies release stress. I hope you wake up restored and refreshed and inspired and ready to go capture a new day and be a more loving you and a more patient you and a more mindful you, and just to see your children as the gifts that they are, even when they're at their worst, because that's when they need you the most. So God bless you, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.